I'm Robin Bennett, and I'm one of the co-founders of the Dog Gurus. Susan Briggs is the other co-founder of the Dog Gurus. And for those that have not been on our website, the Dog Gurus is a business that helps other daycare and pet boarding primarily, although we help any pet care service industry business. Actually, we help them launch, grow, and profit. So we help businesses get started, and then we help them grow, and we help them build their businesses large as they would like it, or help them just to systematize things to keep that as efficient as possible, and possibly even exit if you're looking at exiting your business. We could do all of that through business consulting and staff training programs. So we got our start, the Dog Gurus got its start long ago in a galaxy far away. No, not in a galaxy far away, but a long time ago, we got our start because Susan, we were both running our own daycare boarding facility. Actually, mine was daycare and training. Susan had daycare training and boarding. And we both started daycare around the same time. And this was back when daycares were not normal and dog parks were not common at all, which is hard to believe today for those that have not been around the industry that long. There was a time when none of that was normal. And long story short is we started to develop our own methods for working with dogs. And Susan reached out to me one time saying, because we recognized that there was no staff training programs for daycare attendants. And we learned all on our own. There were really no books. There was no resources. There was no nothing. So we learned through our own mistakes and trial and error and all that. And Susan reached out because we were like, we really need something to train our staff. And she reached out to me and said, do you want to write a book together? Again, this was before Zoom. This was before we had email. I won't say we didn't have the internet. We had the internet, but we didn't have Zoom. We didn't have Dropbox. We didn't have all those collaboration things. We were literally sending chapters just via email, and then we'd have to print the chapter and then edit it and then send it, email it back to her. But anyway, we wrote a book long distance, and that book was Off Leash Dog Play. And from there, Off Leash Dog Play, we really built it for our own, we really wrote it for our own staff, and we started selling that book. And then we started getting people going, this book is awesome, but you should really create videos and test for it and make a workbook for it. And we were like, how hard can that be? So 2 years later, we ended up with our program called Knowing Dogs, which many of you probably have used or seen or heard about. And it is a staff training program to help teach canine body language, initially on DVDs for any of those that might still have. We still have people out there that have the DVDs, but then we moved it to USBs and upgraded it a little bit with the content. And then now it's available online. It's also still available on USBs. Anyway, so that's the backstory about how we got started with the Dog Gurus. And obviously we then eventually merged our companies into the Dog Gurus and started doing more with pet care businesses. But that's just a little bit of history. So when Susan was saying it's Old Home Week, this is a topic that is near and dear to our heart. And it's really what got the Dog Gurus started in the industry, talking about canine body language. And the biggest thing, I guess, that we took away from all of that is canine body language is not that hard to teach, and that you can find any single person out in the world and you can teach them how to understand canine body language. And that goes for pet parents as well as your staff, obviously. And that's what we want to talk about a little bit. And if you have questions as we go through this topic, we're just have a free form conversation about it, but definitely post those questions in the comments and we'll try to answer any of those. So I will throw that over to you. My website is like giving me this weird error message saying, do you want to leave?
No, don't leave.
I just said no, but that was weird. See, this is what I'm saying. When I'm on like a different computer, weird things happen. So anyway, I'm still here. So I guess it's all good.
That is
All right,
good.
I'll throw it over to you, Susan, to let you talk a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the I don't know, I think it was an inspired. I kind of remember even the moment that I had the idea come across to use the traffic management signal as our way of kind of organizing and teaching canine body language. My parents were actually driving me to the airport in St. Louis. I had been home and was working in the car on the way to the airport before I flew back to Houston. But I think that using that as a tool makes it easy to explain and teach and for people to understand and remember, which is the most important thing about canine body language. I think the other thing, Robin, we have taught this so many times and it was fun. Carrie and I taught it again at Hershey. We hadn't done it for so long. But what we talk about is the green's easy for everybody to understand, which are the dogs that are happy, loose, comfortable in their situation. And then the red's easy to recognize because that's the threatening, snarling, snapping, stiff body language. So we end up spending most of our time in the yellow. And the reason that's so important is because once you see some of those yellow signals, it gives you that opportunity to be proactive and get the dog back to green before they progress to red. And so I really think that we were gifted that using the traffic management signal as a way to teach and understand canine body language. And so it's still very relevant today.
And I think I never actually never heard that story about you driving when you came up with that. So that's so funny that learn
Yeah.
something new every day. But yes, we do use the traffic management signal for all of our canine body language information. And we break down the dog. I always like to say when you're teaching canine body language to people, you have to go back to thinking about how you learned English or whatever. This applies, I think, to any foreign language. If English is not your primary language, it's probably also true for any other language. But you learn individual words first in every language. Like you're going to learn the word first. And that's when you look at a dog, we talk about learning the individual body parts of the dog. So we talk about the ears and we talk about the muzzle and we talk about the tail and we talk about what the posture looks like. And all of those are sort of those individual words. And then, because everybody will tell you, you can't take anything out of context, you have to start building those words into the total picture. So you're not just going to look at the tail, you're not just going to look at the mouth or whatever. You're going to start putting that all together into basically sentences and ultimately paragraphs to see what that dog is saying. And we use that analogy a lot. That's also the reason that we do all of our training. So if you're out there teaching staff, I know the biggest thing people want to do is they just want to throw their team into the dogs and be like, watch all this. But I'm just going to tell you, we have learned over and over the best way to teach body language is start with pictures because your brain literally has to get used to seeing what body postures look like individually. Again, taking that sentence and breaking out the words. So with dogs, breaking out the body parts to say, these are what ears look like. This is attentive ears. This is nervous ears. And not only are you looking at attentive ears, then think about all the dog breeds. A German Shepherd's attentive ears look totally different from a Labrador Retriever's attentive ears because the ear style itself is different. So you have to do all that with pictures, and then your brain starts to figure out what those pictures look like. And then we move to video, and then ultimately we move to live dogs. So that's how we teach it. And we do find that's more easier to learn for the student learning it or the employee learning it because their brain starts to figure out what they're seeing a lot faster. There was something else I was going to say about red, yellow, and green, but now I can't remember. So
It'll come to- I know. I was making notes. I was so excited. So yeah, so focusing on yellow, we focus a lot on, I think first, stress signals are easy for people to recognize, which means the dog's not comfortable and they're telling us that there's something in the situation that is making them uncomfortable. So some of the common ones that are easy to see is the closed mouth, open mouth, closed mouth. A lot of dogs, when they're in that relaxed state, have a slightly open mouth. And then as soon as they close their mouth, it's a signal something's changed in the environment that may give them concern. Yawning and lip licking are signals that are also easy to see. The shake off is easy to see. What else is in our kind of stress signals?
a whale eye or the dog showing the whites of the eye is another one that's pretty easy to see. And I just remembered what I was going to say a second ago.
Okay.
When we started teaching red, yellow, and green, you can overly complicate canine body language. I'm just going to tell you that. And here's my example of that because I am a dog trainer. I have been a dog trainer for almost 3 decades now, but I had my staff. I had a group of 13 other dog trainers that worked with me in my facility in Virginia. And one day we were talking about canine body language and I asked them to list stress signals. And that list of stress signals ended up being 3.5 pages long of all the stress signals. And it was like down to the nitty gritty, like every little thing you could see. And it just made me realize, like, that's sometimes I feel like how we want to teach our staff. We're just going to
Mhm.
vomit every little tiny thing that could possibly be shown by the dog, and it gets them confused. They end up getting confused because there's so much. And what we did with the book, and then ultimately with the staff training program, and this is what I would recommend for you guys. And somebody actually, Kathy said, this is such great timing for us. We're going through the dogs with the staff and identifying them by red, yellow, and green. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I would just start by saying real quick, red, yellow, and green. What behaviors do you see? Red, yellow, and green. What's this dog? Red, yellow, and green. Start just telling them to categorize it. And again, as Susan said, red, ideally, you don't see any of that in daycare. Like red dogs, unless you're doing a behavior modification type of daycare, which is not usually what we're talking about when we're talking about daycare, you shouldn't see any red. So if you're getting the staff are like, well, there's a lot of red dogs in here, that would be a flag for me to go back there and to try to say maybe these dogs shouldn't be in daycare. And then the greens, really obvious. The greens are those dogs that are like so easy. Everybody likes them. There's no trouble when they come to daycare. They get along with everybody. Everyone's going to know the green. So it's when you start identifying those yellow dogs, like Susan said, that's when you have to say, okay, why? And I still remember all the times we've taught this. We would often during our seminars, we would be showing pictures and asking the participants to name red, yellow, and green, because I don't necessarily want to start with what do you see? I want them to start by understanding the emotional state of the dog. Because as soon as you do that, now you know, should I approach it? Should I not approach it? Should I be slow? Should I be fast? Whatever. So we start by saying red, yellow, and green. Invariably, we would start getting people going orange, lime,
Yeah.
because they didn't want to commit to red, yellow, or green. And it's a great discussion point because now we get people that are like, oh, totally red or totally yellow. And someone's in the middle. And now you open it up to that whole conversation about what about the dog do you see that makes you say one thing or the other. And then that's the learning factor right there is when your staff can start to, I think he's green because he's got his paw lifted up and he looks like he's getting ready to pounce or play or whatever. Or another person's going, I think he looks a little hesitant and his mouth's closed. And like you start actually talking about the canine body language. And then you can have that whole conversation about what body language you're specifically seeing. But I would start, just like Kathy said, with red, yellow, and green. Simplify it as much as possible for your staff. It's a whole lot easier for them to learn it that way too.
Yeah. And what I was amazed because we looked at a ton of pictures as we were putting the book together and knowing dogs, and that you can see stiffness or relaxed posture in a picture. It's just very obvious. In fact, Robert and I had a lot of fun because we would use stock photos and we would Google like dog play or dog aggression. And we'd go, whoops, they read that wrong because that would be labeled as play. And we knew from the body language it was not play.
Yeah, I remember that too. I was like, wow. And that's a great way if you want to learn and just find examples of canine body language, just go look at any pictures. Just Google, go to any stock image photo and just Google them and you can look at them online. The other thing that I actually it is a pet peeve of mine, it's a pet peeve of Susan's as well, I will say, is when we are at trade shows and or even people send us their websites to look at or whatever. We look at the pictures. And if the best picture you got is a dog that's clearly scared, then we're like, "Well, that's not a good sign if they and we see a lot of vendors in our industry that we laugh about because sometimes we'll walk around on a trade show booth and we'll be like, wow, that place that's promoting whatever for the industry really needs to learn canine body language because the image they're showing on their big backdrop or whatever is a dog that's afraid or scared or nervous or whatever. And once you start seeing that, it becomes very obvious really quickly. But there's so many pictures of dogs everywhere. The other one I love because we do talk a lot about open mouth, closed mouth. I think that's one of the easiest signals to teach your team
Mhm.
when you're greeting a dog, especially that because we are talking about a lot for daycare, but we actually, Knowing Dogs 101 actually teaches all canine body language for anybody. And we recommend that your entire staff go through it. Anybody that's going to interact with dogs at all, even if they're cleaning the kennels, if they're in the lobby and they're greeting the dogs, that's probably one of the first places you need to know canine body language in order to be safe is those dogs that come in with their owners and the mom is, he loves everybody. And the dog's hiding behind mom. don't pet that dog. Like he's saying he doesn't want to pet. Now you still have to acknowledge him. You have, oh, your dog's so cute. What's his name? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'll try to pet him a little bit. He seems like he wants to get used to things or whatever. But you don't have to reach out and pet him because his body language is saying, don't pet me right now. And those staff members are some of the best people to learn this right from the start so that they can not only stay safe, but they're also not making the dog uncomfortable as well. Let me see. So Kathy said, do you not find sometimes with still photos, the message can be saying one thing, but actually the intent is not bad. I've taken photos of dogs playing that when I look at them afterwards, it's, oh my God, I can't use that one. That's so funny. I do totally agree with that, Kathy. And we always do say the picture is obviously a snapshot in time. Canine body language changes really fast. And that's why we like to start with still photos, because you could take a still photo and then 2 seconds later, that dog is play bowing and doing everything. So yeah, definitely. You never totally know. But if you're going to stop that picture a snapshot in time and it doesn't present a good picture of your facility, then I would not use that. And here's a good example. Did you see the Grinch photos that went around? There was like a big scandal.
No.
I don't remember the name of the facility, but I won't name it anyway because I don't know them and I don't think they're clients. But they did a whole photo series with the Grinch at Christmas. And for whatever reason, they thought it would be a really good idea to say these Grinch photos are awesome. And every single picture by intention showed the dog freaking out by the Grinch.
Hmm.
And they got hammered. And someone actually sent it to me. I didn't see it initially, sent it to me. And I was like, wow, that is not good.
Yeah.
Like it literally showed dogs where I was like, based on the pictures, this is freaking abuse. The dogs were clearly afraid of this guy in a Grinch costume. Then, of course, because the internet is freaking crazy, that went through several days of complete chaos. And then they finally posted some other pictures and they were like, we didn't mean to do this. Now, it was like really poor judgment. I don't know what happened. I can tell you, just like what Kathy said, the pictures they showed were horrendous. And they should have thought that through a little bit before they showed them. But then they had a whole bunch of other pictures where clearly the dogs knew who the person was. And it wasn't a problem. But yeah, I just think you definitely have to look. And the hard thing is, I think because the staff, we all love those dogs. We tend to look at them and go, oh, look how cute he is, and forget to really look at the body language. So I think that can be hard too.
And I think sometimes the still photos can show that for dogs, that emotional state, there can be a moment during play where there's uncertainty and things are shifting, but they can move out of it. And so it's still good learning tools. Even some of your pictures, maybe that you don't share with the public, you can use it for discussion. And then some of those dogs, maybe we need to watch just a little more closely to make sure that chase doesn't go on too long or that arousal doesn't make them uncomfortable as it escalates. It does happen so fast that sometimes you can only see the smaller signals in still photos.
Yeah. And I've literally seen situations with not necessarily dogs in daycare, but dogs that have came to my training facility where we did videotape all our evaluations. And I've seen dogs where I remember one, I can't remember the dog's name, but I know you've seen the video, Susan, but it's a bully breed. And I think I bring a lab in and it was a dog aggressive dog. And he is like barking and barking and barking and barking. And you're just like, he wants to kill the, okay, let's end this evaluation. When we went back and looked, he was actually like snarled about 4 different times and none of us saw it in the live action that we were watching. Like if you just watch the tape, you'd be like, oh yeah, he hates that dog. And then when you slow it down, you'd like bark, bark, and then he would show all of his teeth and then he'd bark again. It was fascinating to me. And I see that a lot and so we do tell you, like, go to dog parks and just videotape. Don't take your dog. Like just go to a dog park and just go videotape. They're a little bit weird about it, but whatever. Nobody's really ever kicked me out for doing this. I just show up and I just videotape dogs. And mostly I'm not getting people. I'm getting like people's legs and below because I'm videotaping the dogs. And then I just bring it home. And just when you see something that you're like, that was sketchy, it's great training material for one thing, because now you can just use that to train your staff and show them and do like lunch and learns. But if you see a sketchy interaction, slow it down and see what else you see. I can guarantee you're going to see body language signals that happen really fast that you didn't see lives. So I'm reading through the comments. Several of you saw those Grinch pictures. Yeah. So Lisa said, I've seen them and it broke my heart. That was exactly my reaction as well, Lisa. When someone sent it to me, I was just like, oh my gosh. It's horrifying. I felt so bad for the dogs, and Brandon said they got hammered, deservedly so. And then Lisa said, similar to taking a child to Santa and the child is crying.
Mm.
I use that example all the time when people have the well-meaning pet parent whose dog is hiding under their legs and they're like, come on, just meet him. And I try to always say something like, it's fine, I don't need to pet him right now, he's just getting comfortable or whatever. But it is the exact scenario. Like if your child is crying 4 kids back from Santa, he'll be screaming by the time you get to Santa. And yet year after year, parents just plop their child down on Santa's lap anyway. It's just interesting.
And because that makes a good picture for the album.
Exactly. And then Brandon said the optics are big. And I do agree with that. And I do think today's the biggest pet owning population, I think right now is the millennials. I think we went through that switch now. And I think they are more dog savvy. That's not to say that they all know canine body language, but I think they're, with the humanization of pets, which has happened over at least in the United States, has happened over the last 5 to 10 years, even more so than before. I think pet parents are starting to be a little bit more savvy about maybe not why the dog is upset, but that it is upset, and starting to see those signals. Because like I said, anybody, even small children, if you show them a picture of a happy dog and a really fearful dog, they'll be able to identify it. It's like Susan said, the yellow, the in between sessions that you really want to narrow in on so that you can get the dog to change their emotional state before they get to the extreme of the really fearful or really scared or whatever at the red end. But that's why the yellow is so important. But those extremes, anybody can identify them. And so if you get your dog to that point, even a pet parent's going to be like, I don't really think he likes this.
Yeah.
Well, which is why those pictures I was just talking about of the Grinch, that's why they were so obvious, because it was like, wow, those are like the red extreme end of the scale of what we're talking
Mhm.
about. So I think that's
Yeah,
important.
I think, as you said, Robin, we shouldn't be seeing. I don't think we should really see a lot of red behaviors in any dogs that come to just pet professional services, unless your team are specifically trained and that's a service you provide either through training, behavior modification. I mean, for safety, you'll see things because all dogs will go through that. But if it's every time they come, it's not a good fit. The environment is obviously not a good fit for that dog. And being honest with pet parents to help them understand that and helping them find a better solution for the dog, I think is important, because think about that. We're forcing that dog into that emotional state every time he comes. And is that healthy for that dog long term?
Yeah, and I think as we wrap up, if you have any questions, just put them in the comments because we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. But some tips to get started on all of this. Number one, I would say refresher training all the time for everybody. So even if your staff has already learned this stuff and you never see it, that's actually one of the reasons I would recommend training on it all the time. And that's why I would say don't just train with the dog. If you're running a really good facility, you're never going to see the bad things that your staff actually needs to know in order to know that it's a problem. So I'm not saying take in dogs that shouldn't be there, because obviously that's not safe. But you do, if you have a really well run facility, you start to get lulled into, oh, everything goes great. And your staff never actually sees any of the bad stuff to know how to respond to it. So that is why I like getting video. Like you can Google YouTube videos. I can guarantee you will find stuff on YouTube that you could use for lunch and learn. Or you can go to the dog park and video stuff yourself and use that for lunch and learns, because you want to show your staff the things you don't want to see in your own facility. And if you're brand new, obviously you should be doing all of that training to begin with. But even if you have a staff that's been doing this for years, I would still make sure that you're doing some continuing education to talk to them about, like, why don't we want to see this? And what would you do to, like Susan said, move the dog from yellow back to green? Because that's really what it's all about. It's not just going, oh, look, they're in that bad emotional state. The follow-on conversation is, how do you move them out of yellow or red down to green? Because that's ultimately the goal, is to have all your dogs showing green body language, regardless of what they're doing in your facility. So having that conversation, obviously we have knowing dogs a staff training program as well. But the other thing, and I'll put a link to the daycare games, if you want an activity, then Susan and Carrie talked about leadership. And in order to have leadership, you do need to be able to read the canine body language. So this Facebook Live goes hand in hand with last week's Facebook Live, where they talked all about leadership. But the daycare games allows you to participate in a free activity that will motivate your staff to compete against each other, but you're also competing against other daycares around the country and actually around the world. So I'm going to put a link for you if you want to register for the daycare games. It's free to register, so there's no cost or anything. It's really just a way to help your staff start to work on some of these skills as well. So that's another activity that helps you to keep up with what your team is doing and get them a reason to practice some of the stuff that maybe they learned a long time ago.
Yeah.
Let me go check the questions really quick.
Yeah, we've got a few.
So Brittany said, I'm a trainer. Could the traffic signal system be implemented as a tool for evaluating a multi-dog household? That's a really good question. I think it could actually, because that's exactly what we do when we evaluate dogs for daycare is a
Playground,
similar
yeah.
process. And you could identify that certain dogs, and it could be relational, like depending on how the dogs are interacting, one dog might do better with the other dog than a third dog. So yeah, I definitely think you could do that. That's a really good idea. And then Alyssa said, if we have dogs marked cage, food, or toy aggressive, should they be put as red or just be kept as that specific warning? You know,
I
talk about
think the specifics are important, and if it's only internal staff that are seeing it, you can label them cage, food, or toy aggressive. Just make sure that isn't viewable by the pet parents, and anything that's viewable by pet parents needs to be softened a little bit because people can freak out. Now, they need to understand what that means, but just be careful with that language. But I think the specifics are important because red is very general. So if they were only toy versus food aggressive, if someone didn't understand which was which, they could get hurt. So I think being the specifics is important. And I
Yeah,
wouldn't
and I think it might also dictate what you do with those dogs. So
yeah,
if we had dogs and we didn't board overnight, but we did put everyone down for nap time, and if we had a dog that was cage aggressive, we had specific a specific area for those dogs where they weren't in high traffic areas, they weren't around a lot of movement and activity, they were in a much calmer spot, so they didn't have the opportunity to display all their cage aggression like over and over every day because someone walked by their crate 40 times. So things like that. Toy aggression, we would often play with toys in daycare, and those dogs I knew didn't do well in that environment. We would just take them out of the daycare temporarily while we played with other dogs. So I definitely think that the reason behind it is important to know for your staff. And then Brandon said, I see your programs are for 6-month access. Is that all of that information able to be held onto and kept after the 6 months? So depending on the program you buy from the dog gurus, all of them have different various length of times. So launch formula, for example, is 6 month. Growth intensive is 12 months. Some of our courses are individual courses are 3 months, but you can download all of the PDFs, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, any of those, like anything except the videos, basically. Once you watch the video, then there's usually some resources, and all of those resources you can download and keep in your own computer so you can have them forever. But the access to the actual program, you just would want to download everything before your access ended, because once the access ended, you wouldn't be able to get back in there. So hopefully that makes sense.
but yeah, and all of our programs, there's videos, but there's a lot of other tools that you get to keep. So the
Yeah,
videos are usually there to help
the
you.
videos typically give you an introduction and then tell you how to use the tools, and then you want to download the tools anyway, ideally. So he said he's reading the All About Dog Daycare blueprint now. So that's awesome. Thanks. All right. So hopefully, okay. See, I said we were going to get done in 30 minutes. We're still 3 minutes over.
Because it went by so fast. I feel like we didn't even
No,
get
this
to talk about
topic
everything we
always
should have.
goes
So
fast. So definitely look at what you're doing with your staff. We actually have a game called Match Your Color game, which you can get on our website. However, you can do that game yourself. Just start ripping out pictures from magazines or take pictures. Even if you have your team who takes pictures of your own dogs during daycare, you could even use those pictures. But basically, you just grab your team around and just start showing them pictures and going, what's this? What's this? What's this? And get them to start talking about red, yellow, and green. And then when you come upon one that's they start saying lime or in
Or
between or whatever, then have that conversation. What specific do you see about their body that tells you, that gives you that one answer over the other, and start that conversation? Because the more your staff starts to see those things, the better they will see them on the daycare floor or when they're interacting with the dogs themselves. And it really is just a matter of practicing it before you start to see it better. And that's true. Like, I will tell you, as a trainer, I worked with tons and tons of dogs, but I probably trained for 5 years before I opened my daycare and then started doing daycare since then. I learned more about canine body language the first year of my daycare than I did the whole 5 years prior to that, because it's just, you just start seeing things differently when you start seeing dogs off leash without their owner. But it all starts with just teaching them some of the basics, just red, yellow, green, and then get them to start talking about canine body language. And that's going to help you a lot in managing your play groups and just keeping everybody safe as well. All right, last thing really quickly. Do you have any last comments, Susan, before I
I was just going to reply to Evelyn that yes, our launch formula, you can go month to month after the 6 months. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. If you should get it, if you're in launch formula, you should get an email about a couple of weeks before it ends. But if that has happened and you didn't see it or whatever, just send us an email at the Dog Gurus, support at thedogurus.com, and let us know you want to go month to month and we can turn that on. And then Kathy said the bloopers for sure, the non-postables. Yeah, those are great pictures to show. And especially when you can get your staff to start looking at those dogs they love and see something that might not be the greatest, because we all tend to overlook those things when we love the animal.